Thank you very much. I'm happy to get things started. My name is Tony Dahlman. I work for the James City County Police Department. I'm currently one of our assistant police chiefs. That's a new position that we just created with some changes in the department. So there's 3 assistant police chiefs, and I'm lucky to be one of those. So I've been with the James City County for 27 years, done lots of different things in the police department, and I am currently the division commander for our administrative and professional administrative services and professional standards division. That's a little bit about me.
And so what is your official title?
Assistant police chief.
And so when we address you, is there a specific way to address police chiefs? I've never, you can help educate me.
Sure. And so Tony is great. That works perfectly fine. But if you want to be formal, you can, but I don't ask that of anybody. So, you know, Tony is great for me. If you want to use the title, assistant chief is fine, but really Tony is perfectly fine with me.
Well, great, Tony. Welcome. We appreciate your time
Thank you.
today. All right, let's go. Let's see. I guess next on my screen in order would be Mr. Dunn.
Well, thank you. I'm Sean Dunn. I'm the police chief in Williamsburg. It really is a pleasure that you guys would have us join you today. A little bit about me. I started my career with the Portsmouth Police Department in 1993, and I served 21 years in Portsmouth, including every rank, including police major. When I retired in 2014, I had the privilege to go out to Martinsville, Virginia to serve as their police chief for 3 years. And then in 2017, I can't believe it, but 5 years ago this month, I had the true privilege to come to Williamsburg, and I've been here since. So it's a wonderful community. Our police department is approximately 44 sworn. And as you guys know, we're a very safe community, but sandwiched right in the historic triangle, beautiful Williamsburg. So I'm happy to be here. And again, thanks again for allowing us to be part of your meeting today.
I'm Danny Diggs. I'm the sheriff of York County and Pocosin. I'm glad you got the new guys introduced, except for David. He'll be in next. I've been the sheriff for 23 years. I'll be retiring at the end of this year, and I'll be happy to be working with y'all maybe next year because I'm running for state senator.
I've been the sheriff now for on my 3rd year. I've been doing this type of work since 1990 when I started in Newport News. Came to Williamsburg in 95 and have been here since. Our office is pretty small. We have 19 total people. And anything we can do to help, we'd be interested in trying to help you.
We appreciate that. We appreciate that. And as you all know, I think when we were first planning this, I'd mentioned to our law enforcement experts that we record these sessions. And while it may look as though the audience is relatively small, we know that when we upload this recording to our YouTube channel, our membership comes back and watches repeatedly. So while they may not be participating in the live discussion, this will be broadcast widely, and we have a really good turnout of people who will watch and repeatedly watch the information session. So again, we appreciate you all. We so respect what you do for our communities, and really that's the essence of us having asked if you could participate with us today. I think when we see so much going on around us, and we know the value that you bring, as I said, to a safe community and to safe neighborhoods, and candidly to realtor safety, which always is top of mind to our officials, or excuse me, to our members. There have been some horrible stories of realtors who have found themselves in very unsafe positions. And we certainly train and work with our members to understand what they need to do to put safety first. But I think we'll start, if you all don't mind, maybe with just sort of a quick discussion from each of you, and you can certainly cooperate and ping off of each other. But how do you all approach community policing, neighborhood policing, And what do you think is probably the most important task you undertake to make our neighborhoods safe and our families feeling as though you've got our backs and everything is in good order? And why don't we start with, I might be unfair here, Chief, but knowing that I'm a William and Mary alum and I know campus well, and I know students having been one and very engaged with the college, I think you all in the city have a number of different dynamics in play because of the student population. So with that, maybe you can start us off on how the city engages in community policing and neighborhood safety.
Sure. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. So we really believe strongly in 21st century policing, and one of the big tenets of 21st century policing is community policing, and I feel very strongly that without community policing, a department really isn't going to be as engaged with the community as they need to be effective, especially in 2022. And so I feel like it really is part of the fabric of who we are and what we're about. And we work very hard and really devote a lot of resources towards doing those things that help to ensure a lot of engagement and relationship building with our citizens. We've actually broken our city down into 20 distinct geographic areas and assigned an officer to each of those areas. Most departments, Williamsburg included, for the traditional patrol officer that comes in that's going to be patrolling the community, would have about a fourth of the city. And for a city our size, about a fourth the city. And as you might imagine, if you had an officer who works different days of the weeks and different times, different shifts, days to nights, giving them 1/4 of the shift and asking them to really build strong relationships with the people within that area that they're assigned, that's a pretty big undertaking. And in fact, I've been doing this, 28 years now, and I'll say it's an unrealistic undertaking. And so for us, we've decided that we're going to break the city down into smaller pieces, smaller bites, if you will, so that we can assign each of our officers one of those small areas. And so now, rather than asking the officers to really build strong relationships in 1/4 of the city, we ask that officer, hey, just take this 1/20th of the city and do what you can to get in that neighborhood or those neighborhoods, get out of your car, go to the playgrounds, knock on some doors, attend community meetings, and really be that point of contact for that community so that you really can build true, lasting, real relationships. And so that really is, I call it a program. We have it set up sort of like a program, but that really is the fabric of who we are and what we're about. It translates into every neighborhood, every business, everywhere in the city. And it's somewhat unique around campus because we do have campus police, the William and Mary Police Department. And so we work very closely with them. They're good partners of ours. In fact, I mentioned early on that I retired from the Portsmouth Police Department. The second in command at William and Mary also retired from the Portsmouth Police Department, and we work most of our careers together. So we have a wonderful relationship, and we work very closely together. The past, school year, we, just in an effort to build relationships between the police department, our year-round residents, and then the students that were going to be, in town for that semester, that academic year, we decided to have some cookouts in some different areas around campus. And we selected, I believe the number was 6 different locations, so that around campus we could have our citizens, our students, and our police just interacting. I'm a strong believer that when you break bread together, it is so much easier to build those relationships. And so we really do. That's one example. I don't want to take too much time, but we have a really robust a program and approach, if you will, to citizen engagement. We also have an officer, his name is Charles Stamper, who's assigned to our community engagement unit. A lot of departments might call it a crime prevention type unit. And his goal is to create programming that would extend throughout the city. For instance, there's a group, it's a national effort called the Seniors in Law Enforcement Together, SALT. And all of our law enforcement partners here participate in that. But that's a type of event that, once a year, a couple times a year, they put on big events where a lot of seniors from, in fact, the way we do it across Peninsula, have the opportunity to come together and share crime prevention tips and share ideas and just, have that network and that relationship building. So in an effort of not taking too much time, I will stop there, but at some point I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. That is helpful. And I've forgotten that you came from Portsmouth. I think it's the fire chief in the city who came from Danville, which is a
And
place
he
I love.
resigned about I would say 6 months ago, but yeah, we did. Yeah. Fire chief was from Danville. Our current fire chief has been the assistant chief here for 4 or 5 years, maybe probably 6 or 7 years. And he is the acting fire chief at the moment, Larry Snyder. You guys may have met him. Great guy.
Yeah, good guy. So why don't we go next maybe to Chief Dahlman over in the county? Sort of a similar question. I mean, I think, and this might be of interest too to Sheriff Hardin. In James City, while it's right next door to Williamsburg, the size, not just in terms of population, but in terms of geography, is so much bigger, and we're growing. We're one of the fastest growing counties. So how do you, and maybe you and the sheriff can pinch hit off of each other, although do I see David? There he is. Okay. Maybe you all can pinch hit off of this, but how does the county approach community policing, just knowing you are so much bigger, and again, population and land mass?
Sure. So we have a community services unit that is their primary responsibility. That's 5 officers and a sergeant. And their primary responsibility is community policing, community relations, building those relationships with all of our residents, citizens, people who work and play in James City County. So that's their primary responsibility. And they put on programs. They do things like our Citizens Police Academy. They do our Shop with a Cop event. They do all sorts of things in the community all the time to help build relationships with folks. But we also, every one of our officers, our community policing philosophy is pushed out to all of our officers, and everybody is working towards building those relationships and trying to make a connection with the folks that they interact with out there on a daily basis. We try not to have the first time that you meet us or the first time that you see a police officer be one of those negative encounters, whether it's a traffic stop or it's an emergency that we've been called to. We want to make sure that our folks are out there and they're meeting people all the time and getting into neighborhoods, getting into businesses, and like I said, building those relationships. The relationships are really the key to our success. We can't do this job without the community, or we certainly wouldn't be nearly as successful as we are if we don't have the support of the community and really the investment of all of our citizens. So we push that philosophy out to all of our officers, and I think they do a really good job of being out there, meeting people, getting to know our citizens and business owners and folks all the time. But our community services unit, they do push out those programs and have events and programs in lots of different neighborhoods throughout the county. And sometimes we have centrally located community events like here at the Law Enforcement Center. But a lot of times those events are out in the specific neighborhoods just in order to build those relationships and, trust between us and our citizens. So everybody does community policing, but then we have that unit that's specifically responsible for it.
Very good. I have thought about signing up for the Citizens Police Academy. I think that's something that is on my bucket list. I think that would be an amazing experience. And I remember speaking one time to Robin Bledsoe, who had gone through it, and Ruth Larson, and the two of them telling me about some of the good things that they saw. I mean, it was a game changer for them. And I think that is something that I would very much like to do. Sheriff Hardin, how about you?
Well, our office is a little different than everybody else's, being that we take care of courthouse security, civil process. So our guys are constantly out on the road serving papers, dealing with the public. We do a lot of interaction with the public while we're out there. We see a lot of the public when they come in here. We work out in the public for extra duty assignments. And we've always tried to work with both Williamsburg and James City County Police Departments when they do their national night out. Specifically to going out and doing our own, we haven't had much of the opportunity, only because of the size of our office. We're 19 total people. Not saying it can't happen, but it's a lot harder to happen with that little people and continue to operate the rest of your time. When we are out and about, we do monitor police calls. We do drive through the neighborhoods and watch out for what's going on. I have had the opportunity to speak to different organizations along with the real estate company that's across the street here about safety talks with them. You know, we're, like I said, we're more than willing to help wherever we can.
We appreciate that very much. And you know, you brought up a good point that in so many different communities in Virginia, because cities and counties operate differently, even in terms of their law enforcement structure. You know, in many counties, the function of the sheriff's office is, in fact, just as you said, it is to efficiently run the courts and efficiently run the judicial branch of that community. And yet in other communities, the city's police departments are the law enforcement side. And in other communities, the sheriffs within the counties are more law enforcement in addition to running the court system. So you know, we are unique in Virginia, as you all have heard me say before, in that we have our independent cities and counties, which have different authorities that are granted to each of those communities. But we're unique. And I think unique too, as I bring in Sheriff Diggs, is York County, because you also, much like James City, you have a huge landmass. And you also have a lot of federal properties within the county, ranging from Camp Perry, and I know they have their own law enforcement division, Naval Weapons Station, Cheatham Annex, the National Park Service. How do you all engage and interact through community policing efforts that extend to these other law enforcement entities throughout York County?
So let me quickly answer the question about community policing. We do very similar to what James City and Williamsburg do. We all have similar programs, so I won't be redundant about that. We certainly encourage our officers and expect them to build relationships in the various neighborhoods and communities in the county. We do our formal programs through a community service division, much more like James City does. We do have special challenges. You mentioned our geography. We're very long and narrow and separated by the Colonial Parkway and the weapons station, and also we serve two different communities really, because the Lower Peninsula community is a different community than the Williamsburg Historic Triangle community. So that's a little bit of a challenge for us, but I think we handle that very well. And we work very well with James City and Williamsburg. When we talk to our counterparts across the country and other parts of the state, they're always amazed by the level of cooperation that we have in the Historic Triangle and even in the Greater Peninsula. I think it's because of our geography being so intertwined and the relationships that we've all built. And pretty much Camp Perry is, boy, they're out there all by themselves. They're a special bunch out there. The weapons station, we do things with them, but there is a little bit of housing that's in York County down there in Lee Hall. Part of that's Newport News, part of it's York County. We've got the Coast Guard base, and there is we do develop relationships, and we use each other's resources, and we freely share those with our federal partners and our civilian localities. I think it goes very well in that we benefit from all of this collective knowledge.
I would agree with you. And, you know, one of the questions that I have as well, it might be, you know, in the minds of others who are watching now or will be watching is, you know, you all make a great effort to be out in the community. You're visible. We see your patrol cars. I see you all, you know, in the neighborhoods. I see you out and about. I see you at community events. I see you at elected officials meetings. You do have a presence, but are you seeing anything that is indicative of the lack of respect that perhaps we're seeing in some communities with our law enforcement officials? Or are you thinking, or are we in any way maybe insulated from some of that because we have such a very unique community? All of you have a Williamsburg address. Trying to explain that to people who don't live here is mind-blowing. Like, they don't understand that there are 3 different jurisdictions all within a Williamsburg address. But considering how diverse our community is with an aging population and yet a student population, what do you all sense is the perception of law enforcement from within the greater Williamsburg community? And I'll let whomever wants to go first on that one, because I know that's probably an open-ended question.
Well, since we're not all jumping off at first, I will take a stab at this. You know, so I'll say we do have a wonderful community here, and I think we are fortunate. When we look at some of the other localities in Hampton Roads, I think they have some challenges that maybe we are not facing, and I think that's a really good thing. You know, I will say I think the way that it's impacting at least Williamsburg, you know, that where it's a very real, tangible, you know, impact on us, is with our recruiting. We have now just finished our 3rd hiring process in a row, and we typically do 3 per year. So that's about a year's worth of recruiting processes, in which in each of the last 3, we've not been able to fill all of our vacancies. And so that really is you know, it's an alarming trend, I would say. When I worked in Portsmouth, I mean, it was not uncommon to not fill all of your vacancies with a hiring process. I mean, that's kind of the par for the course. You're trying to fill so many. But here, you know, we had 2 processes where we're trying to fill, I think, 4, and we weren't able to fill them. And then this most recent process, unfortunately, our separations had crept up to 8, and we have made job offers to 4. But that's you know, a 3rd process in a row. Now we have 4 vacancies that are going to go unfilled. And really, from the time you start that process before that person is out of all their training and able to serve the community, it's about a year. And so really puts us behind when we're not able to fill all the vacancies with each process. So I definitely, I think we're feeling the effect of that. And I really do. I think that's because of, you know, a lot of the you know, the scrutiny that law enforcement has been under the past 2 years. I certainly, you know, appreciate the scrutiny. And I think that the situation that happened that kind of started this in Minneapolis 2 years ago, I think we would all say is a terrible tragedy. And unfortunately, they left a stain on law enforcement, not just across the country, but, you know, we're connected to law enforcement peers in other countries, and they also felt the impact from the George Floyd situation. So great question.
Well, and that was very much sort of leading into another question. And the other gentleman, please feel free to, you know, comment on the recruiting impacts, because that was going to be my follow-up, is the impact on your sustainability and your developing the bench, if you will, of new law enforcement recruits and officers. So, and it's interesting, Chief Dunn, yesterday I was with the interim commissioner and law enforcement chief of the Virginia Marine Resources Commission. I represent seafood, and I engage quite a bit with law enforcement of VMRC and with the leadership. And they had told me that up until about maybe 2018, 2019, when they would advertise for an opening, they would get usually 100 applications per opening. I mean, a VMRC police officer, I know, is very different from all of you. They have to be aware of the water. They have to be, you know, certified boater. I mean, they're all of the different, what you do, but then engage the water. So they would typically get 100 applicants per position. This last go round, for 6 positions, they had 31 applicants. And you know, they cover, much like you all, their jurisdiction covers every ounce of water from the Northern Neck all the way down to Virginia Beach, the rivers, and it is a lot. And so they're concerned too, that what are they going to do about the future recruitment? And it all ended up going back into budget, which we can talk about in a few minutes too, and how much like school teachers and and other professionals upon whom we depend every day, what can be done to uplift the salary scale and really incentivize people to go into the law enforcement profession. So hold that thought though. So why don't we go to Sheriff Diggs? How have you felt maybe any impact, Sheriff, on attitude toward law enforcement, and then any impacts on the recruiting of deputies and other staff within the sheriff's office?
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
All right. Recruitment has gotten very difficult, especially recruiting new people into law enforcement. We've had great success in recruiting people, and we don't recruit from other agencies, but we hire a lot of people from other agencies. When I say that, we're not out trying to steal each other's people, but those who are in, let's say, nearby more urban localities are glad to come here to York County to work because of the, and I'll just say the whole historic triangle, because of the community relationship. There is that negative tension does not exist like it does in other localities. Certainly not like you see on TV and what you perceive in the national media. When I hired a guy from, let's say, across the river several months ago, and he'd been here, and I brought him in the office, said, how's it going? He said, man, I cannot believe this place. He says, people treat me with respect. They treat me kindly. They buy me coffee. They buy me lunch. They talk to me nice. When I was at another jurisdiction, it was an us against them mentality. And everywhere you went, you thought that you could be attacked, or there was just this negative perception. And it was just terrible, just a terrible morale and terrible conditions to work under. And he's here and he's thriving and doing a great job. And these officers talk to each other and they explain what it's like to work in a more suburban area as opposed to an urban area. And we do a lot of our hiring from these urban areas, but new people are very difficult to attract because of the perception of all the stuff that you see on TV. People think it's like that everywhere, and it's not. And I don't know that we're unique in this region. I think the problems are really kind of urban versus suburban. That's where the real problems lie. I think most suburban communities have very good relationships with their law enforcement agencies.
Tony, what are you guys doing in James City maybe to try to address the recruitment issue? And you may not be having them, but I have a suspicion that it's probably across all branches, at all levels, suburban, urban, maybe not as much in the rural communities, but curious as to how things like that are being handled in James City County, particularly as the county grows and the force may need to be growing.
Yeah, it's a universal problem for everybody right now. Everyone's struggling with recruitment because of the negativity. And we like to say that we're really happy and lucky to be here in James City County and not in some of these other places around the country, and even some other places you guys can think about in the region. I think everyone in the historic triangle is facing the same or very similar problems for recruiting. We have about 11 vacancies right now. We're authorized 106 officers, and we have about 11. So we're right at about 10% vacancies right now. And then we do have several people that are out hurt or sick or for some other reason on long-term leave. So we are feeling a staffing crunch right now. And as far as how to address that, we just work really hard on recruitment, and we're trying to get our applications into people's hands across the region. And we've started to go further from home than we have in the past. We're going to job fairs throughout the state, and even some that are not in Virginia. So we're stretching out there a little bit further to try and bring some folks in from other places, but it's a universal problem. And, we try to inform people, teach people about, James City County is different than those other places that they might be working at now, or that where they might live or where they've grown up, that we're a little bit different, and that we don't have the same, everyone has similar problems, but we don't have them to the same degree that they do in other places. So, that's what we're trying to do to bring people in, and we're seeing a little bit of success, but it's just a big challenge right now. Salary is part of it, but that's certainly not all of it. I think a lot of it, as Chief Dunn said, is due to the negativity that we're seeing just around the country and in the media.
Well, and to the issue of salaries and budget, again, talking to Chief Rogers yesterday with Marine Resources Police, he was telling me when a new recruit comes in, and so that their first year, the pay is so low. That's what they're struggling against, is VMRC police are not even paid the same amount as maybe someone in the city of Williamsburg and their police person. So they're even competing for, I think, the same pool. And then you throw in Virginia State Police. There is a lot of need, and anything that we can do. This is what I shared with Chief Rogers yesterday. Anything that we can do to help deliver that message to lawmakers of, much like we're talking about making sure that our teachers are paid well, and so that we can have that bench of teaching experience going forward. If we can be surrogate messengers to help our policymakers uplift the budget so that we can make sure that our communities are adequately policed and are safe, then that is certainly a top of mind quality of life issue that we would want to be helpful and partner with you all. We have great relationships with our legislators at the state and at the federal level, and we want to be good community partners with you all. Anything that we can do to help you, certainly let us know. And that might be a discussion that we can have as the General Assembly session starts to think toward 2023. But for you, Sheriff Hardin, again, knowing that you all really do much more of the jurisprudence management. I mean, how many of us have gone into the courtroom when our children are being issued their driver's license, which I think is a really special opportunity that is given to young people in James City County. I know when I started driving in Kentucky, that was not the way it was handled. But for both my sons, who were Lafayette High School boys, when they received their driver's licenses, they had to go to the courthouse to get it. And I remember Judge Fairbanks saying, and Miss Sheila, I think, was the deputy there that day. I remember them saying to every student, "Don't you ever come into this courtroom with bad news for me." I mean, they made them feel that getting that driver's license was such a privilege, and the responsibility that they had to be good citizens so that law enforcement would not have to intervene on any bad decision that they may make. I thought that was really special. But how do you all look at your recruitment and the level of respect that you may be receiving just within the courtroom, which is a very unique place to be and not necessarily out in the community, but you're already dealing with tense situations in a courtroom many days?
Well, I'll first hit on the recruitment part. So I've had a position open for the last 6 months. Our salary is pretty low, very low, even compared to police departments. So it's kind of hard to get the right person. What we're seeing more on applicants are literally names and their email address, and that's it. They're not even filling out the information. Probably because of COVID money that's out there that was meaning that you have to apply for a job, and whether you get the job or not, you're still going to get paid. We're seeing a lot of that. And we don't want to just settle on a person. We want to settle on the right person. So we're not going to be giving that job away to somebody that wouldn't normally jump through the right hoops and meet our criteria. As respect for our office and our guys out on the street and within the courthouse, one is, I got to say, Sean Dunn mentioned it earlier, we're very fortunate in this area that we have that respect from the community that we do, and we're not like some of these other jurisdictions that don't have that respect. Still, but looking at the job, nobody wants to be in that job because everybody's grouped together that everybody's bad, which is absolutely not the case. We all know that media plays a large role in how law enforcement looks, and that's unfortunate. That's hit us in this past couple years, and we're kind of our own worst enemies at that. But I will say, as for the courts, we've stopped doing the license things for now due to COVID. They're now actually mailing them out. I absolutely agree with you. I think the best thing to do is have your youngster come in, because it also, the judge, if you remember, he told you that you are the ultimate person. You are the judge when it comes to the license. If you don't want them to drive, you can take that license from them. And that's a big thing that children need to hear. They would usually tell a story about, the death of a young man or woman who really wasn't doing anything wrong other than being at the wrong place at the wrong time. But right now we're currently not doing that just because of COVID. And, so my hope is that it will come back, because Virginia is one of the only ones that make you go to court to pick up your license. And then the other thing is the respect for the court. When I grew up, you go to court, you dress up, you put on a tie, a straight shirt, and you see it's completely changed now. People come in shorts, flip-flops, tank tops. And when you have to have a sign on your door to tell people not to come into a courtroom like that, it's and there are exceptions. And my exceptions I always tell people is, we do live in a vacation area. Sometimes things happen to where people come here and that's all they have. So you have to understand it. But when you have your normal crowd that lives here and everything else that come here, it's, to me, shows a lack of respect for your courts and your judges. And I think it's just the way our civil society has changed. But again, with respect to our officers and how we're treated out there, I think we're very fortunate here in this area.
Well, and a question that came in over the chat, I don't know if all of you were able to see it earlier, so I'll just take the opportunity now to pose it to you, is knowing, sort of to your point, Sheriff, that we are a tourism town, and we have a lot of people who come visit, and we have a lot of people who live and are residents here where there may be a language barrier. Maybe it's Spanish, maybe it's Chinese, because we do have a lot of foreign workers who even come in, particularly during the height of the tourism season. How do each of you, and I think maybe, Tony, you might be the best one to ask this, and then maybe Chief Dunn, because of the high level of tourism that's right in CW and Busch Gardens. Sheriff Diggs, maybe with Yorktown, it would be important as well. But regardless, how do you all train your officers in any sort of a situation where there is a language barrier? Or do you look for that sort of ability to speak Spanish, or have some sort of a basic understanding of other languages?
Yeah, so we do offer some very limited Spanish language training, so that officers will know some very basic things. But we don't have a lot of officers that are fluent in Spanish. But the ones that we do, they get paid for their ability for their foreign language skills. So we have a program where we have a number of officers that are fluent in Spanish, and they get a pay bump because of that. And then they come out and help with any situations that we have where we need that. We have office staff that's fluent in Spanish as well, so that we can, handle folks that might come into the office But in addition to the officers that we have that have those language skills, we all have access to what we call the language line, our language bank. And so if there's a language that we're not familiar with, or that we don't have somebody working that speaks that language, we can place a phone call and handle that, whatever the interaction is, whether it's a traffic stop or a call for service or taking a report. We can handle that through a translator over the phone. They can talk to the translator and back and forth like that. So it's a little bit cumbersome to do it that way, but it works for us, and we're able to handle that way. We can handle just about any language, and not just the few that we have folks that can actually speak those different languages.
Chief Dunn, how about you with the city and a lot of visitors and a lot of students from across the world too?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I've heard the statistic that the Historic Triangle has 6 to 8 million, 6 to 8 million visitors per year. Now, I'm sure that wasn't the case during COVID, but during most years. And so that's a lot of visitors from around the world. So we really do, during the early time of the officers with us, we help them to understand that the folks that they may be, having contact with, and sometimes maybe during an emergency situation, maybe they don't speak the language or understand our laws or understand our customs. We have visitors from here that back in their country, if an officer were to approach you, their best bet might be to hand them a couple of pesos or some sort of money. And so it really is, it makes for a fascinating experience for a police officer to work here, but it also does, prove to be challenging in some respects. We do a lot of training and a lot of education and a lot of, helping some of our citizens to understand the law, if you will. We have a large number of folks from Eastern Europe, especially, that rely a lot more on bicycles than they do cars, and they're riding those bicycles in a city that is full of cars. And so there's a lot of education that goes on there just for their safety, just because we don't want anybody to get hit by a car. Obviously with the students and the crosswalks, that's another thing where there has to be a certain level of education that we do, but it affords us a certain amount of relationship building, I think, as well. We also use the language line. We do have a couple of officers that speak Spanish, but not nearly what we would like to have. But I will say the technology today makes it a whole lot easier than it was when I started in '93. I can tell you that. So that is a good thing. But no, great question.
It's a good point.
Yes.
We can all translate it right here.
Exactly. Right. We also, and this is something that I would say over the past decade or so, many police departments are doing this. But much of our the publications that we have, we're also getting them in Spanish or other languages. And we work hard to go, we have a couple of areas in the city that we know we have higher concentrations of Hispanic community members. And, it's often difficult for us to, like, if we do a toy supply drive or something of that nature, it's difficult for us necessarily for that community to feel like they're a part of whatever that effort is. And so we'll go to these different places during our school supply drives or our toy drives and that sort of thing, and actually take these Christmas gifts or school supplies to these communities where we know there are larger numbers of Hispanic members of the population. We also work, in fact, I'm on the board of the Salvation Army, and so we work closely with the Salvation Army. They really do have a wonderful relationship with our local Hispanic community. And so when there's a toy drive or something like that, or just an opportunity for us to come and connect with some of the youth at the Salvation Army, that's a great opportunity for us. And that's something I'll say to my other law enforcement here. If that's something you wanted to get involved with, please let me know. That they would love to have you, as would I.
That would be a great opportunity. I think our members are very altruistic and truly believe in giving back. So I think that might be something that we could definitely think of as an ongoing effort, mutual effort to help our citizens. So I'm going to switch gears here for a minute. I have several things I think we could still be talking about. But one of our missions, one of our objectives, being in the universe of public policy, it's certainly the grounding of much of what we do as far as our local ordinances or state legislation and even federal legislation, is how we create additional inventory, additional housing supply, particularly for first-time home buyers and for workforce, for our community municipal workforce. And when we talk about workforce housing, we often will hear reference made to, we want to make sure that our teachers, our law enforcement, our fire department, our healthcare workers are able to live in the community where they work. So are you seeing an impact, any of you, on affordable housing being an impediment to coming into law enforcement? And what can we do, maybe partnering with you all, to advance those policy efforts that will increase the supply of affordable housing, so the officer who is community policing a neighborhood can afford to live in that same neighborhood? And Sheriff Diggs, maybe we start with you. I know that we've got a lot of housing potential in York County, but I really would love to hear from all of you. And I know Chief Dunn, I've been working very hard with the city manager on some affordable housing and neighborhood balance issues. And I think that's an important issue for you as well. But why don't we give Sheriff Diggs a chance, because there's a lot that's going on, particularly in the upper part of the county, that might be additional affordable housing inventory if we can make a couple things happen.
I seem to be having trouble. There we go. Okay. That is a significant problem of getting officers to live in the communities that they police. I know a lot of my officers, they live in other localities, mostly Gloucester. I'm gonna have to give Gloucester some credit. It's a little cheaper to live over there. I think we can do some things. I know that other localities, not so much here in the region, but across the nation, they provide like grants to help people buy housing in the communities, law enforcement officers, teachers, firefighters. I think that is something that it is valuable. Oh, let me tell you, we hire the best people we can, and we do this, but it really pleases me when somebody that we hire is already living in the community or they're moving into the community. That's awesome. That always pleases me when that happens, and I would love to see more opportunities for deputies, police officers to live in the communities that they serve, because then there's that complete buy-in. When you live in the community that you serve, boy, that just really means an awful lot. And I think we're all looking for opportunities, and I think just the easiest way is some kind of a subsidy or a grant program where we can get our officers in our communities.
I would agree. And I do know that in some communities, there is a housing trust fund set up within a locality's budget that is dedicated to offer those grants for first-time home buyers within law enforcement or teaching or nursing. So we do have the Virginia Housing Trust Fund that is set for that purpose as well. But I know it's something, particularly even working with Drew Trivet, the city manager in the city of Williamsburg, that's been on sort of the push in the 5 to 10 year effort, as some of the responses that we've developed to the affordable housing issue in the city is looking down the road to actually creating some sort of a local trust fund that would be established to help municipal employees live in the city and have, to your point, Sheriff Diggs, that vested feel of how important the community is because they live in it. But Sheriff, Chief Dunn, I'll put that to you maybe for a response as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a tough issue. It really is. I think Williamsburg, we have a small number of that workforce housing units, and so some of our employees are able to take advantage of that. We recently had a success story where somebody was actually able to transition from that into a home they were able to purchase. So, I mean, it really is. It's a fantastic opportunity. It's a challenging issue. But it really is a neat thing. I think for us in Williamsburg, our leadership, our city council, our city management, the topic has been approached so many times, workforce housing and affordable housing, that I just think the message to our employees and those that maybe otherwise couldn't afford to live here is that, hey, it's a known issue and there's work being done on the issue. And Susan, folks just like you that are involved with this, this issue that can have such an impact on the lives of folks, and in some cases workforce, but in other cases, some of the more vulnerable people in our communities. It really is noble work. So I thank you for being a part of it. And I am happy that there's a big effort here. Stay tuned, I guess is the best way to say that. But certainly, and you guys you have just such a wonderful opportunity to directly touch that issue. So really, it's hopefully, at the end of the work that we have going, hopefully in some at least small way, we have some model that maybe can benefit other communities. So we're excited.
Yeah, I think that is something that we've talked about, is taking the ability for, and I think we've talked about this, folks, the Realtor members, from I think our discussion with Mayor Pons earlier in the year, where the city does have a program that is geared towards city employees, gives them the opportunity to get their foot in the door, to live in the city, and actually helps to elevate them into home ownership. And it's really a very special program. And I know that both the city manager and the mayor have lauded that you have the first graduate from that program into home ownership. So now it's just repeat the pattern. Before we started talking about affordable housing, and this is certainly, I think, on the spectrum of potential ownership, but even also touching our tourism, is what the universe within this community, within this region, is on the short-term rental opportunities, challenges, has both. From the state policy perspective, we were engaged in that issue, but sort of had an arm's length on it because our members fall on both sides of it. We certainly love the idea that a property owner could take advantage of establishing a short-term rental property and create that revenue stream, but we also are very sensitive to what a short-term rental property impact may or may not be within a neighborhood. So knowing that this is, both on the spectrum of lodging and hospitality and tourism, and also in the spectrum of home ownership, what are you all hearing about short-term rentals? Do you receive a lot of calls on noise violations, parking violations? Where is your community on how you're approaching that specific living arrangement, shall we say, or tourism arrangement? And why don't we start with you, Tony, because I know that James City has a lot of short-term rentals, and then we'll go to Sheriff Diggs and to Chief Dunn. And I don't mean to leave you out of this discussion, David, but anything that you want to add, because you're probably hearing about some situations like this that may rise to the level within the courtroom itself. But Tony, why don't you take a stab at how James City County is dealing with some short-term rental issues and any intersection with law enforcement?
Sure. So, we don't have a tremendous amount of problems at the short-term rentals, like the Airbnbs and those kinds of places. We haven't had a whole bunch of interaction with folks in that kind of situation. Where we have had some problems have been at some of the timeshare resorts, where we've had folks coming into the timeshare resorts that were here not necessarily for tourism, but to have an event themselves. And they've resulted in some situations where we had some promiscuous shooting calls, and we've had a homicide. We've had some different things like that. So that's probably, as far as the short-term rental type situation, that's where we've seen the majority of the problems. And we're working closely with those folks to try to just keep a better handle on who's coming in and renting places and what the real purpose of their rental is, so that we can make sure that they're here for the reasons we want them to be and not for the reasons we don't.
I had not thought about that. That is a really interesting perspective, and yeah, give some folks an inch, they'll take a yard. So, but thank you for policing all of that, because that's certainly, you know, people don't want to come to a community even to visit and see our amazing attractions if they don't think that it's a safe community. So thank you for doing that and keeping our economy moving forward in the tourism department, especially now that we're outside of COVID. Sheriff Diggs, what are you thinking about that? Or have you all heard within your department any impacts from short-term rental implications in the county?
No, the county, the Board of Supervisors is really struggling with this issue of short-term rentals. I think James City does a better job in that they have like performance standards, or they have some kind of procedure where they can administratively do that. Right now, all the short-term rentals in York County are special use permits on a case-by-case basis. I know that they're looking to want to do something that's standardized so that people can get their permits administratively. So for the few we have, they're not any trouble. You're right, at a timeshare, some people from nearby will come in and sometimes abuse a timeshare. Timeshares run specials or other things like that, but that's kind of rare too. The real perception with short-term rentals is this perception that the potential neighbors have that, oh, this is going to ruin their neighborhood, this is going to ruin their quietness. And boy, I would really, I think, to be fair to neighbors and property owners, are to come up with some kind of rules that would be standardized, or give localities at least some parameters where they can get this problem solved, so that people can make some income on their property while still preserving the nature of the neighborhood. I personally haven't experienced or seen where short-term rentals have really had any kind of a negative impact on a neighborhood, but our experience is very limited.
You know, it's interesting because I heard a discussion point from a previous meeting on short-term rentals, that in an eviction situation, and a lot of our members are landlords themselves, or they are professional property managers, and so they manage a lot of the rental homes that might be for students or for professors or for whomever might be living in the area before they are able to purchase a home or leave the area and go elsewhere. That it is easier to handle a renter in a short-term rental situation, because they can call you all and get a very fast response that will perhaps even end that short-term rental agreement very quickly, as opposed to the perhaps 18-month-long and very arduous process of evicting a tenant for an entirely different purpose or a different reason. I just thought that was an interesting perspective, that short-term rental issues can be handled more efficiently and quickly, as opposed to a traditional landlord-tenant eviction issue. Had just not really, I mean, it makes sense, but I just not really ever thought about it until it was articulated like that to me earlier. So we'll see where the short-term rental issue goes. I know that the city has been looking at it. I know the city manager is, he, I think, sees the benefit, but he certainly wants some guardrails around short-term rentals so that there's not any negative impact on neighbors and neighborhoods. But you know, there are so many other things that we could be talking about. I think the role that you all play, particularly our sheriffs, in the eviction process, and knowing that you all are the first contact with a tenant in a very scary situation many times for them. And that the landlord has usually tried to work something out. And we try to make throughout our property management universe an eviction the rarity, not the norm. And again, the value that you play in being that first interaction and delivering what is often very shocking news to someone. And we've tried to make a relationship within the departments to make sure that those are handled well, and that we can be, working with you all and be a partner in, again, what is a very difficult situation. And so we thank you for being that interaction and making it as positive as it can be given the circumstances when it comes to an eviction. Between that and affordable housing, safe neighborhoods, wanting to be a good partner with you all, because you all really do make our communities hum. When our children were little, we used to always say that law enforcement and police, they were our community partners. And I think that's how we all have to approach our universe, with the very incredibly difficult yet incredible work that you all do for all of us and for our community. So let us know what we can do to help you, whether it's the school supplies drive that is done, or Christmas and holiday outreach, and whatever you all might need from us, from the basic to working at the high level policy discussions to increase your budgets and increase your pay and work with you on providing additional housing opportunities. Please consider us partners and reach out to us and let us know what you need. We want to be as much available to you as you make yourselves and your teams available to us, and you make our jobs and our lives so much easier. I just can't thank you enough for what you do for all of us. So I know we've kept you a few minutes past 1 o'clock. I'll see Madam President if there are any questions, and I will turn it over to you to round us out.
Do we have any other questions? I don't see anybody's hand raised, or I haven't seen any questions in the chat other than the one we had earlier. Thank you so much for your time. You are our partners. We do enjoy working with you. We want to meet you under good circumstances, never behind the wheel, whenever we've been driving a little bit too fast or something like that. Fortunately, I haven't met any of you that way. I don't intend to in the near future. None of us hope to, but we thank you so much for all that you do for our community. Williamsburg is a wonderful community and a great place to live. And the York County side of it, of course, I live not too far from Sheriff Diggs' office, so he's right around my corner. So take care. Thank you. Have a great day, and we'll look forward to talking with you again.
All right.
Thank you all. Great
Thank
meeting.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
We'll stay in touch. Bye, gentlemen.